And I'm Rico Lim from OpenStack, and you want to introduce yourself?
No, just you.
Good.
Yeah, this is Yanlu from OpenStack.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about how he orchestrates Kubernetes applications. And we're going to go through some details, and even fancier, we're going to do some part of our things we talk about. We have some light demo for it. So cross the finger. It's a So let's skip the contents. Anyway, we're going to talk about from why we do it, from what's the design, and what's our implement, and why we do it, and finally what is the community can do about it. Eventually, what we can provide it to you. And so there you go.
Yeah. I will introduce the first part, why users use heat. And let me introduce a typical user scenario, create applications manually. If you are an operator, when you want to create an application, you need to create a YAML file and define resources, parameters in the file, and upload it to the Merano manually. It could be very easy for an operator. But if you are a cloud product user, it may be a little complex for them to write such a YAML file. So at this situation, we recommend they use Git. Just drag and drop the resources on the canvas. You can create an application and upload it into Merano. It's very easy and flexible. So we have summarized Git capabilities such as Git can orchestrate infrastructure resources and import it into Merano, orchestrate new resources under the existing network topology, and auto-scaling ability. And last, Git can leverage the Git dashboard capability to create a resource connection automatically. And at this page, I will introduce the Kubernetes trends. And as we all know, Kubernetes has been one of the most popular architecture, and almost 70% of the world's Fortune 100 companies use containers, and more than half of them use Kubernetes as a container orchestration engine. And this diagram shows the Kubernetes usage by container organizations such as GCP, Azure, and AWS. So we can imagine for an OpenStack user, if they want to create a Kubernetes application, they need to manage the OpenStack infrastructure resources, Magnum cluster, and Kubernetes application. It would be a little complicated, so we recommend they use Git as the unified management platform to manage these resources. And the following part, my colleague Rico will introduce the architecture design. So it's your turn.
Okay, thanks. Oh, sorry, did I go to the wrong way? Yeah, what? Am I going up or why? Yeah, sorry, my fault. Full. Yay. So yeah, let's go through the basis. And before I go through the basis, I would like to so we just show you that manually that actually like you can have your own applications. And for Kubernetes, you just have to write a Kubernetes YAMLs and say, yeah, I want the Nexus container, and which I want something running on top, and the thing I want running on top, how I want to configure it. And beneath it, you just have to run your own, I don't know, maybe VMs, maybe bare metal is a thing for this summit. And so you can do it by separately, and you can do it even by manually, like those are templates. But so we're going to go through the basis on what we're talking about here. And we're going to go through by basis on why we need to start it. And we already told you that we have this kind of a needed because the user needed. And we actually have a bunch of users request. And not even our own user, like we have, so in China, we have a lot of a user. I don't know if that is the same scenario in the globally or what, but there is a bunch of users, they say, hey, those are cool features and we want to update our server, we want to update our data centers. Yeah, we want Kubernetes, we want OpenStack, but are you telling me that I'm only can like create an application on Kubernetes, but I can't use the exactly same flow to create something for my OpenStack? I want to combine it, and that in some scenarios just don't make sense to land. So here we are. We have our own stuff that we want to introduce and why we're doing it. So Yanlu just talked about heat and how he can do that. You can have a resource type to do it, and for automatic, for scaling, for you want 100 of something and you wish to batch create or batch update, and for the automatic, for entire resource management, I mean, or like orchestrate. Or you want to use other OpenStack services together, but you don't want to manage them separately. Heat is a resource that might help you. And Magnum, that is one of my favorite projects as well. Magnum is a very cool feature because it just got adopted by Kubernetes as one of the official way to deploy Kubernetes on top of OpenStack. And you might just figure out, yes, we build our solution on top of Magnum because that is part of it. So it is like it is not like a center, but we build a lot. We build other services and we build other things around it. We will talk about later how what we build and maybe trying to let you figure out how we do it. And so yeah, Magnum is a thing. And so for who you don't know that Magnum get the ability to deployment Kubernetes, and Magnum you can use heat under Magnum to as a plugin to ask heat, to let Magnum ask heat to deploy your Kubernetes. Also methods and others as well, but I guess we are talking about Kubernetes because we use Kubernetes by ourselves. And Kubernetes, yeah. So I guess we don't have to talk about too much detail because Kubernetes is a lot of things, and I don't want to like go through all the bases because that is not the center of this. The center of this talk is about what we build and how we can make this entire flow consist, right? But anyway, the Kubernetes is about you can have a way to orchestrate your containers, and there is a specific namespace way to you can have a pod, and the pod within you can have your own containers cluster, and there's other way to for Kubernetes to manage a resource. Like recently, if you heard about that in the keynote, yeah, that's very fancy. We have a very fancy OpenStack provider, and there is a lot of people work very hard to make it happen. And so right now, Kubernetes actually got the ability to access some of the OpenStack resources. So there's another thing we would like to say, the Dragable design. A Dragable design is something actually community already started to introduce, which if you just have the heat dashboard at the very recently released, you should see there is a way in the recent heat dashboard you can drag sync and drop sync. So that is a thing to allow user to use their mouse and trying to use a pointer to get things without trying to type the template. And we think that's very useful. And before we dig into some of the technical flows, let's talk about a little showcase on what the platform outlook looks like. So, yeah, good. So this is just a proto. So what the UI looks like and what the other part look like is not that important. We basically want to discuss. We want to show you how let's start from Dragable, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's create a stack. So usually if you have experience with creating a stack, you have to write a template. You have to write a YAML template, say, yeah, I want the resource A, and I want what property, I want what value in the property, I want what environments, I want a lot of things, but
so you can drag the resources on the left navigation, and the cameras will help you to judge which resource is the right connection. So this is the public net. If I drag the instance directly, it will have alarm information. It will have the tips told, please connect the router first. So I need to drag the router, the private network instances, and with a load balancer. And then you can choose to adapt a drag and floating IP on these resources, and then you can choose which one you want. So this is the configuration tab, and this is a quota tips tab. It can make sure that your resources would be created successfully because the quota is left. So I will configure these resources.
Yeah, so we list this as one of our base. Like we want to show you what it is before we start to talk about what it means to have a Kubernetes applications with Heat, because this is actually part of Heat. So this is just a Heat dashboard. It's customized by our own, but if you're using the community part, you can actually get also a Dragable, but maybe not that much resource, and maybe you don't have a Kubernetes resource inside, but you still get the ability. And by the way, a community needs people to help on the Heat dashboard. So if you are interested, join us. Yeah.
So this time we should to save them, and I also will show how it can be imported into the app center.
So what you see is that we use Dragable design to actually have an entire flow complete, and now we create a template out. And the template is a thing that you wish to have it, and so in this case by using Dragable. And that is not the end of the entire solution. The entire solution should be user playing with applications. So right now we're going to put the template in the application center. So what you can see, trying to put it in the application marketing, which is like things like Murano will help you with this kind of a style. So yeah.
So at this time, you can see that there is an application what you have created on the app center, and you can install the app directly. So you can see this app is deploying. And we also show when you want to add another version for this app, you don't need to create a new application. You just when you create template, you just choose create from app center, and you can see the application what you have created on the cameras. So select the version, and then you can see the diagram. And now you have been back to the canvas, and you can do some another configuration. And now we still click the save and select import to app market. And now there are two choices. You can choose to create another new application, and then you also can choose the created application to add another version. So this time we choose to add another version. And then now at the application center, you can see there are two versions here. And you can choose the version which you want to deploy it. And now what we have just deployed application has already been deployed, and the status is active. So that's all what we want to demonstrate.
Yep. Can you switch back? So yeah, so that's a show. That is a showcase on how the uptime, and trying to let you guys know what exactly is Dragable, because it's not something that I can just actually say, yeah, it's Dragable, and you'd have no idea. And so why we've been out with application center like this kind of way, like Murano, because we're talking about we're going to have a way to talking about how to build Kubernetes applications on top of Heat. But we're not going to talk about it by saying, yeah, you can just writing a lot of template, and those template you can using. I mean, to be honest, like nowadays, you're writing your own shell script, you can do a lot of things. But we try to make it like simple, and that is the message we're sending out. To have a simple way to actually allow to create, directly create something you wish, and directly from the application center to create something Kubernetes applications. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things been going on in OpenStack community, and some place getting dropped and some place is not getting maintained. But that is something that we kind of wish the community can help to keep pushing on. And should I do it again? So so we already talked about all the bases we have, and we kind of like a rest have over the time. So let's dive in with architecture. We actually talking about what it means by from the application to Kubernetes to OpenStack. It actually not that complicated, and it's not something that you can't achieve in your own environment, because so in this diagram, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with. I'm not familiar, but I'm pretty sure you know every single one of them. I mean, so the Heat dashboard, we have community hub, and we have as well application center. Well, serverless is another concept. I'm going to talk about that later. But application configurations, if you are a user, you basically have very simple configurations, or you have very complicated, depending on your applications. And you have your own application image. By this case, we mean container images. And also, yeah, sure, you have your applications because you need the application image to be running. So that is architecture we adopt, and that is not something like, so right now you're probably like, yeah, I see it, and it's not something new. Yeah, we don't want to do something new. We want to do something which currently have. We don't want to reinvent something and say, yeah, this is so cool, which is not. So let's dive in a detail and show you how exactly you can do it. So in this detail, I'm not going to use in the exactly code we have because that by long times of developing, that code is very big and is not suitable for it's not suitable to put it here without having hours introductions here. So first, let's do with the very basic. So you already knew Heat, Magnum, and Kubernetes, these combinations. You've been keep reminding about in the entire summit. And so in our way using the Magnums is that either we have using a survey like directly from the application center, or we directly using the Heat. I mean, we're using the Heat to create a Magnum cluster because it makes sense when we create a Magnum cluster, and inside the Magnum cluster, it actually back to Heat and using Heat to create a Kubernetes cluster. And in this case, every single thing we have mostly, I mean, it is inside of a Heat cluster. And by that, we can actually manage the entire thing. I mean, we are the operator. We don't want thing to be, actually I'm the developer, but she's the operator. And she don't want the thing to be, you ask me to have our own OpenStack setup, and so I do it in OpenStack. You ask me to have Kubernetes setup, okay, so I have to jump to Kubernetes. And whatever wrong in either way, in entire infrastructure, I have to separately go to other places to do it. So anyway, this is about the basic architecture. Now, nothing new. Everything here you see is in the community already, which is already released for a very long time. It's all supported. It's basically a Magnum cluster with you provide a basic cluster template, and that is how it's done. It's simple. And now the application config and application image is not something new. So it basically, we don't want to reinvent things only because we want to use it. We want to use what is in the community. And so what we're using it, we're directly using the Kubernetes YAML. And we're directly using the information in the Kubernetes YAML. And so the exactly same template, exactly same information can be used directly by the Kubernetes, or by the Kubernetes UI template, and it can be used by our own application center. It can be used by our Dragable designs, and it can be used by when you trying to, well, whatever you want, it can be used. I mean, that is something that we needed, right? We want a simplicity and easy. We don't want to we want to do something new, and we have our own spec of YAML and our own format. That is not what we needed. So sorry about this. This page is a little messed up. I'm pretty sure that they're actually quite simple, and it is. So let me go through this very quickly because don't worry about it. It is not something too hard. I promise. So at the very left, at the very left, you will see there's a very long lines of code. It actually is just a sample for the resource type of Kubernetes resource type inside of a Heat resource, and that is a very simplified version of it. It basically tells you, okay, there is a Kubernetes application basis, which means you need to able to deployment something in the Kubernetes by coding is we directly using the Python library by the Kubernetes, and the real cases might be more complicated because you have a lot of things to handle. You need to handle the error. Heat itself already handle things like if you want the mass scale, and Heat already handle you if you want a certain delay, and Heat help you to have a lot of resource failing management. But still, there's something like like error handling, you have to write it because you want to tell heat when it is failed and when you should retry. So there's some basic thing if you want to use it, like you want to have a handle create, handle delete, and you definitely need to check the completed when it is create completed or delete completed. And for application, there's versions. So we have version control. So I must say the version control is a very complicated thing, and so which I'm not trying to bring up in this talk, and because it really takes long hours. But to version control, you just have to remember how you handling the resource update. In this case, we're using heat to tell you it is possible to have your own Kubernetes resource inside of heat. So that means if you want to handle the version, you should put it like either it's simple version handling. You can just you can just send it through the over the template that you have in your heat resource, or otherwise you have to write a specific version template to make sure everything's working. Just experience told you that is something matters. Also, by the security means also very important. Right now, it is possible by using the community to have your own identity from OpenStack to certify what you have in Kubernetes. But the design is kind of very, very tricky though. So you have to care about the identity part as well. That is, when you want to do this, the identity definitely the thing you don't want to mess up. And so anyway, the very left is the resource, and if you done that right, you should be able to create your own Kubernetes resource type with heat. I mean, a resource type is application. So so to rethink about this, it's actually quite simple. You just writing something in heat and have your own applications in the heat. Basically, you're writing some Python code. Well, if you want to write other, will be fine, but we're using Python anyway. So you just write Python code and tell, yeah, I want my application to run in, and if you don't want to do anything special, you just ask it to deploy the template. Well, nicely done. And so with application basis, you can, so our cases we implement in very application basis about basically handling all kind of application, because we let user to choose the application they needed. We're not going to define all the application to the user. So we write the basic of the application and resource type, and user can directly use it, or it can provide other property like it change the image name of it. You can change the image properties. By basically, you just simply change the spec in your Kubernetes YAML, which in this case, it will directly fit in. I mean, the spec is just the directions we're looking at. And so the resource registry now and the applications of the application of our web application is there. So right now we have is that if we want web applications, we can basically have a web applications, and which is creating over heat. So what that means? For us, it's simple, because what you need to do, we're trying to convince you here that why you need to using heat to do so, which at the first glance you will say that might be a very stupid thing to do, right? Why don't we just using Kubernetes? I mean, we can use Kubernetes to do this though, right? But I know for operator, I'm not speaking for every operator, but for users and operator, we facing to have multiple ways to do the multiple things is very, very confusing. I mean, like confusing way, like they are not developer, and they kind of need it if you want to directly using the basic tool you have to all the way. And And in order to do so, as what I mentioned, that things you need to handle before you're doing so. We're not going to say this is very easy and yeah, you write it and it's done. Because like what I say, the identity is basically something that is very tricky. Nowadays, in the, either you're putting your own identity in the Kubernetes resource in the heat template. No, sorry, not in the heat resource. Or you need to find a way to bypass those identity through the Python library. I mean, bypass the identity through the from the heat identity. OpenStack identity and Keystone identity fit into your Kubernetes. And in the Kubernetes, you have to use those identity to authenticate the application process you're doing. So maybe that might be a little complex, but that unfortunately needs to be done. I mean, right now the new application provider is, I think, is capable to doing so, but it's just new released, and our Kubernetes version and our OpenStack version, we didn't use the newest master version yet. So. But we kind of expect that the upstream version can help us with this case as well. But right now, we're using our own way to handling it by what I just say. Basically, it's actually the same way to do it. Like you're trying to having a Kubernetes service to authenticate what you're doing. But we just keep repeatedly say, yeah, that is very important thing. You have to be very careful because you provide this environment to user, and the user, he or she just thinking about, yeah, I'm just creating an applications, and they not really care about what is the identity behind, because once they log in, they don't, as a UI, they don't really care. They just want to create the application by some click and done. So this is the phase of the user want to do, is just dragging the application into the cloud, and it is done, and like the way we show. And the real way is that you actually put in the application into the heat cluster. We're not going to say, so I'm not saying this is like, okay, this is the perfect solution. But the why is just like what I described. We really need this kind of a thing because a centralized thing to do. And second, we have our own UI portal. We have our own UI. We have our own PaaS level. I mean, platform level as a service stuff. And even furthermore, we have other plans like serverless. I mean, every company must have their own service plan to talk about. But we need to make way to do it. And by making way to think about, we're not going to ask the developer of that product, of that service to access to OpenStack and do something and went back, and access to Kubernetes and do something and went back, and access to other service because you need a third-party service to run in the management and went back, and even if you have your own adaptive service or other service, you have to access to that and went back. Now that is not something good for upper level. So that's something that that's something that we've been trying to talk about here. And is the identity the only thing we're facing that is challenging? No. There are other things that are challenging because we're talking about security. Because, I guess it's kind of like an identity-related issue. So you have to remember that security for your container is essential because your container running in the same cloud, and your container is running in your VMs, which your VMs might share with other people. I mean, that is OpenStack level. And you at cases, and it is possible that even it's a bare metal, which whatever things happen there might be very critical to your environment. That is something just will happen. So security will be one thing. In this case, we kind of recommend you to actually review what the user image is, or you wish to provide a basic image you have because you want to define the basic config of your containers about either or the Kubernetes config about either how security it is. You don't want to expose some of the you don't want the user to change it from the applications to actually a service type, and so the user from running applications become running your Kubernetes server service, and that might actually happen if you don't limit it. So so in our case we don't expose that to users well. The third thing is make sure you testing entire flow, because OpenStack tests by themselves and Kubernetes tests by themselves as well. But if you have this crossed OpenStack Kubernetes situations, the current test of the upstream is not enough, and it sometimes becomes buggy when you're talking about having an application. And serverless is another. So we didn't implement services yet in our environment, but it is something that we've been thinking about and we've been trying to figure out if this is the right way. But in our cases, we actually have very unified infrastructure, which serverless become very possible because whatever happens, we want a new server behind the serverless. We just create whatever we want to do with OpenStack, we want to do with Kubernetes, we're doing in a single workflow, which makes things possible. Or otherwise, people think about, yeah, serverless we're doing with Kubernetes, nice and done. But once the serverless become bigger service, and there's nothing you can do because Kubernetes has its own limit as well. And you want to do something in OpenStack, how to coordinate with OpenStack and Kubernetes. That is exactly the thing what we're doing here. I hope that this kind of information might help you to reconsider what you are doing with your environment, because that's what we're doing with ours. And it's, we won't say it's like the best solution in the world, but it definitely helps us to keep pushing the further. So I guess I trying to already work a lot of way to say why we need to do it. So maybe we will leave it to later. We have a few minutes left already only, but the thing is that we're not going to keep telling you why, but we are companies, but we also part of a community. The thing we need to know is why not. Like, we want to know from users, we want to know from operators, we want to know from the community. So tell us why not you want to do it. Maybe if this is very stupid scenario for you, I want to know why not, because we need to keep thinking about what we can do for the better. And the community plans, so I kind of think like run through the community plan for this. We have a Kubernetes, we have a heat dashboard, but the heat dashboard is, we kind of need more people to keep maintain it. And we also have a Kubernetes, we have OpenStack provider in Kubernetes already, but that is, we're kind of hoping that will keep evolving, which is very active. And we do wish to keep using that. We're not fully using it as well because most of the features are just recently released, but we definitely looking forward to change from our own plan to their plans and see how that works. And yeah, I guess the community didn't have a Kubernetes resource, application resource for heat yet. And from upstream, from community level of thinking, I don't know if that's a good idea yet, but maybe you guys can tell us if that is a good idea, which welcome to join the PTG. Although it's nothing to do with this session though. Well, anyway, that is the solution we have. And I guess we get into the last minute. So any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Then thank everybody to be here. Sorry about the presentation, maybe not be that detailed. If you want to learn more detail, feel free to contact us, and we definitely can provide some more talk about it and more technical detail about it. Or otherwise, happy to see you guys here and hope to see you the rest of the summit. Thank you.